Hello, Renee, in Austria. How are
Hi,
you?
Sarah. I'm fine. Hello.
Okay. All right. So today, what we're going to do is look at Tommy Raskin's horoscope. It's without the time, and I do not really know where he was born, but I put Baltimore, Maryland, because his father, Jamie Raskin, is a representative from Maryland. So with a person who is not a public figure, I create a natal chart that is based on a 6 o'clock in the morning time. And so what you see on the screen is Tommy Raskin's horoscope for when he was born on January 20th, 1995. Now, because he was suffering from depression most of his life, or a lot of the time of his life, because he was only 25, it's important not just to look for the transits or progressions occurring at the time when he took his life by suicide, but also to see where is something in the natal horoscope that would indicate some kind of serious inner disturbances, or also some kind of challenges in his dealings with the outside world. And so it's right off the bat easy to see that he was born with an almost exact Jupiter Saturn square. And so I'm going to mark this to show that there is a square here. And when you have Jupiter and Saturn making a conjunction, square, or opposition, it's called a sharp destiny. When you have Jupiter and Saturn not in a major aspect, a sextile or a trine, it's called a loose destiny, excuse me. So what happens with this type of aspect, it's dealing with the motivation or what causes a person to stir within themselves to some type of response to life. That is why it is called the department pair of motivation. You have the sun and the moon there, the department of vitality, Mars and Venus, the department of efficiency, Jupiter and Saturn are motivation, and Uranus and Neptune are significance. So with these planets in square, he definitely is born with a struggle in terms of his outer approach to life with Jupiter, and the Saturn aspect, or the Saturn influence of always double checking if he is doing the right thing with himself. So what I'm going to do right from the beginning is read what the Jupiter-Saturn square means for a person. And this is coming from the Essentials of Astrological Analysis by Mark Edmund Jones. And it's page 125 in the chapter of self-ordering. Jupiter Saturn in square aspect indicate an ordering of life's fundamental motives through which the native usually suffers very immediate consequences of even the least neglect or abuse of his own potentials. He finds he must fight continually for the ideals in which he has come to take the most consistent interest, and also learns that his conscious well-being is wholly dependent on the moral struggles in which he becomes involved almost inevitably at every stage of his experience. If he does not relish the days in which he seems torn to pieces in self-uncertainty, he must discover ways to tear himself apart deliberately and in equally painful fashion on the behalf either of some cause of real significance or some conception that he can dramatize through his own being. Personal existence under this configuration can become either great opportunity or else a gradual disintegration of the soul in the very core of itself. So you can see just from hearing that a person with a Jupiter-Saturn square sharp destiny is going to go through an enormously painful struggle no matter what they do, okay? And on planetaryDynamics.com blog, there are a number of horoscopes that have been analyzed for their sharp destiny. They are Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez with the opposition, Anthony Bourdain with the square, and John McCain also with the square. So you can search for those names and read a little bit more or a lot more about the sharp destiny. So Anthony Bourdain was an example of a sharp destiny where he failed to capture the essence and meaning of the challenge and committed suicide as Tommy Raskin did. And John McCain and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez were able to rise to the occasion. So with looking at Tommy's chart here, we see obviously that Sagittarius and Pisces are square to each other. So let's look and see if there's anything else to compound the problem from birth. And because we do not know the exact time of birth, we might have to ignore this opposition of the moon and Saturn, because if he was born about 11:58 at night, it may be out of orb. I think doing a little calculation will tell. But we do have Mars opposite, for sure, opposite Saturn. So that is an indication that we have a possible T-cross whenever you have an opposition. And obviously, since Saturn and Jupiter are square, we do. We have a point focus of Jupiter. We also have a point focus to Pluto. And we have a point focus to Venus. So this is a very powerful configuration, which may even include the moon, so that there is an enormous amount of energy going toward these three planets, Pluto, Jupiter, and Venus. Now, Jupiter and Venus are the benefics. And so one might think this is really a nice element to focus on, the benefics. But we also have Pluto, which is notorious for giving some profoundly difficult situations in people's lives. So I would say this is one of the culprits, Pluto point focus, that makes life an extreme experience for Tommy, okay? Aside from the T-cross and the point focus three planets, right? He's also got Neptune, Uranus, and the Sun conjunct. This is very significant as well. And so one of the things that I was reading was that a person would, in order to resolve their inner struggle, they would have to tear themselves away from situations that are causing great concern by finding some outlet or purpose that is beyond the usual mundane, ordinary way a person would be living their lives. And so with Tommy, he became an advocate for animals. And I think his father had cancer of the colon and became a vegetarian. And I believe it was because his son was encouraging him to go in that direction. But the cause for which Tommy devoted his life is one, to help humanity and help the animal kingdom, and is also very closely related to what a person should do if they are struggling with a sharp destiny. Now, if you have any questions, just chime in, Renee. Otherwise, I will continue to look at this chart.
Well, I find interesting when I see the Neptune, Uranus, and Sun in Capricorn, 24, 26 degree Cancer, Capricorn, which is opposite our destiny. I mean, this is, but you're talking about a sharp destiny. So when Pluto was just going over that, right?
Well, I can point out that when he was suffering so greatly at the end of the year, I believe he took his life on December 31st, the turn of the year, and New Year's Eve. And Pluto was just about like midpoint between Neptune and Uranus, and coming closer to Uranus, moving toward Uranus, which these are the planets. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are the planets that represent the biggest changes in your life, or the planets that, when they are aspecting your horoscope, are the indicators of profound experience, because they move so slowly. So that throughout I believe 2020, there were several transit of Saturn over these planets, as well as Pluto being right there amongst these three in Capricorn, that put a lot of pressure on him, which, when you look at his natal chart, back referring to his natal chart, he has that point focus Pluto, as well as the Jupiter and Venus, but Pluto, another significant planet. So in several ways, the transit of Pluto, activating the point focus Pluto, shows that it was something that he could not grapple with. And in his suicide note, he mentions that his disease won that battle. And this is typical of Pluto and its ability to control your life. And the reason that it controls a person's life is because it is the voice of the entities beyond our world, beyond the human communication and mind. It is the cosmic mind. And so what does the cosmic mind mean? The cosmic mind means that it is the universe talking to you, rather than the human ego speaking to you. And the way in which Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto put pressure on you is through aspects with your natal chart, whether in transit or progression. And they speak to you through pressure and through giving you pain so that you wake up and say, what is wrong? So that when you say what is wrong, you might be able to get some answers. Unfortunately, their astrology is left out of psychotherapy, and I believe that if he understood from childhood what he was dealing with, he would have a better understanding and a better handle on life. Okay, he was being challenged, and very few people, I believe, around him understood what that challenge was all about. So I see that when you have the sun at 29:55 Capricorn, it's just about ready to go out of Capricorn into Aquarius, but it's still conjunct Uranus and Neptune, that are the significant planets showing that his life, because the sun represents your purpose in life, is wrapped up in something more significant, and which he was able to channel. He understood that he had to do something that was not your normal way of expressing yourself or the normal way of living. And that's why he chose to be a humanitarian. And this is shown in his opposition from Mars to Saturn in mutable signs, that he was interested in the welfare of others, be it humans or animals. That is the sign of the humanitarian, the mutable sign, natural disposition in mutable signs. So in so many ways, he has a very profound and beautiful horoscope that he was unable to live up to because of the inability to understand the core setup or DNA of his astrological potential. And so this is the part one, let's say, of his looking into his horoscope. I would like to look at his sapient symbols in our next meeting. But I think this lays the groundwork and shows you some of the foundational structure of the planetary configurations.
I wanted to ask you some questions. If you don't find them interesting or they fit, then you can cut that part out. Is that okay?
No, go ahead.
First, when you started, I was thinking with this square Jupiter to Saturn, I was thinking that Saturn also representing his father. I was wondering if they had struggles, or was his father very supportive of what he wanted to do? That was my first question.
Okay, well, let me answer that. I think more than struggles between their personalities or anything, because it appears that they were quite well suited as father and son. It shows that a lot of the conflicts were probably over the dietary practices. He was against eating meat. And when with Mars in Virgo, okay, you can see Mars in Virgo up here.
Yes.
Okay, opposite Saturn. I think he was concerned about what his father was doing that created the Cancer. Okay, that's one way of looking at it. Certainly there may have been some conflicts at times, but mostly an opposition can, not mostly, but sometimes an opposition draws people together rather than finds fault or conflict. But both are possible. And the history of his relationship is unknown with his father, except for that his father has made comments and Tommy's comments in his suicide note shows that he had a lot of love for his family. He just could not handle what he was experiencing. And then, of course, if the moon and Saturn are in opposition, all the more polarization. But this can be awareness, which he became very clear in his understanding of what was the menace to humanity. And you can see this in his writings. Yeah, all you have to do is Google Tommy Raskin writings, and you will come up eventually and be able to read some of his essays. So, and they were particularly analytical, which is very Plutonian.
Yes.
Pluto, the planet Pluto, it wants to analyze everything at super depth. And Virgo is the sign of analysis and picking things apart in order to understand the whole. And so I think this horoscope is amazingly powerful. And to have a point focused Pluto, it's like he was meant to do something in his life to make an impact on society, which he has already to a certain extent. But if he had lived, if he had understood what was going on, the dynamic within, he would have had a better chance. But having significant planets, Uranus and Neptune, along with the purpose of his sun, right? Because the key word for the sun is purpose. He had a purpose that was beyond the normal. And
now okay, sorry. Let's say you were, you would have met him in his difficult times of depression as an astrologer. What would you have given him or his parents for an advice?
I would have said that he has an exceptional potential where he would need more guidance than the usual or average person. And that I would explain to them what I have explained about his horoscope, and that there is a focus in the chart where he should gain more information. All the Sagittarius planets, the Pluto, Jupiter, and Venus, are in Sagittarius, which is normally referring to philosophy, religion, psychology, okay? And so I think that I would have encouraged him to gain more and more information about how the world has analyzed and documented the spiritual path. I would have pointed him in that direction.
Okay.
And I would have also said that his drive is beyond business, which would be the Capricorn, but to achieve something of a more spiritual nature. I would have not only mentioned books, but I would have probably mentioned meditation as a method, because he has the Virgo planets that show that methods are very important. Saturn, opposite Saturn in Pisces, that he could feel very, very overly sensitive, because Saturn in Pisces is quite emotional. And I believe that the moon, if I would have the correct time, and I'm sure I would if I were in contact with his parents, to know the exact time, I would just say that as is, or he already shows that there could be squares from the moon to Pluto, Jupiter, and Venus, which would show some emotional intensity. And then also the sharp feelings of an opposition with Saturn. He was highly emotional. And so I would have suggested that he learn to be more detached, which would be the Pluto point focus, that it's necessary to be removed emotionally from some of the experiences, which I think he was not. He was so totally emotionally immersed in whatever he was doing. And I think that that was leading him more in the direction of just being more and more emotional. So that's what I would have advised, is to seek knowledge and to find those answers that bring people to a more transcendent or detached state of consciousness, which would have helped him through all the emotional challenges that he was bound to go through.
Is his family spiritual minded?
I don't know. I think that what we can do is consider this part one, just the introduction, and
okay.
what we can do together is do a little bit of research to learn more about the family. And, you know, part two, we can look into a few of his Sabian symbol degrees, and also start a conversation on the family background, because a moon opposite Saturn usually indicates there is a strong connection between the mother and the father. So let's look into that and come back together at our next meeting when we have a little bit more information. And so for now, let's close this session. It was nice talking to you or showing you Tommy Raskin.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this. It's very interesting. Sad, but
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So let's meet again then soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.